Hello, Benjamin.
Hey, Jack, how you doing?
I'm all right, man. How are you doing?
Pretty
Good to
good.
see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It has been. I think we spoke in 2019.
It's been that long already. Holy cow.
Yeah, the whole pandemic happened.
That did happen.
I think, if you remember that.
Just 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks with the masks, apparently, they say.
Wait, are you
On
guys
the
still
plane.
in 2 weeks
On the
land?
plane.
Oh, okay.
No, they just announced that they may release the mask mandate on the plane in 2 more weeks. Just 2 more weeks, they said.
2 weeks. It's been the longest 2 weeks I've ever experienced, man.
Yeah, man. I can tell you about that, too.
Yeah.
Since 2019, but we first talked in like 2017, 18.
I think you went on Mike Peros's you didn't go on, you went to his class.
That's right, at Evergreen.
And that was in the fall of 2017.
Remember when Evergreen was like,
Do I
the
remember?
hot spot, man.
Yeah.
It was.
It had its moment. They're almost dead now.
It did.
They're about.
Is it?
Yeah, they're about done.
Oh, beautiful campus, nevertheless.
Yeah, totally empty now. They really did a number. They doubled down, and then they kept on doubling down.
Did they pay for it in student enrollment?
Yeah, student enrollments. I think it's around 1,500. It's under 2,000, and they need to be at 4,000. But it just went.
Boy.
And so they're just floundering. I don't know what they're going to do, but they're supported by the state, and the state's controlled by Dems, and the Dems really like the equity agenda, so they're trying to, keep it going.
Keep it afloat at all costs.
Yeah.
To truth and reason and reasonableness.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Those are the key words.
Reasonableness.
Yeah. What have you been up to?
Oh, man. Well, today I spent some time outside in the yard with my son building some gardening furniture and fixtures for the backyard. Kids are on spring break.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've been trying to learn. One day we want to be out of the city, and the timing isn't right for that just yet. So until we can do that, we've decided to make our backyard into a farm. And so we're building all kinds of fixtures and chicken coops and getting hens.
Wait, how
and
many chicken coops are you making?
Well, sorry, chicken coop,
Okay.
singular. And getting a handful of hens and just doing it in the backyard, even though we're like right smack dab in the middle of the city. But it's fun, man. You get the kids out there. And, other than that, man, I'm back to doing all the normal things, man. All the normal things, working with the Liminal Order, doing a podcast, working with my guys.
Who have you been interviewing on your podcast?
I just had Jordan Hall on the other day, and before that, John Robb. And I've got one in the can with Jeffrey Miller, and I've got Luke Burgess coming up to talk about his book Wanting, about Rene Girard and mimetic signaling and mimetic contagion, which is very timely. And it's good, man. I continue to do the deep dive stuff, which was really my interest in the first place. Doing the deep dives, heavy, high level stuff, some abstract, some practical. But really, the best part about it was just reading a great book and thinking, man, I want to talk to the author, and then having the luxury of being able to talk to him for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And pick their brain.
Yeah.
You read and I'm like, hey, I got a question here. Oh, you just write it down.
Yeah.
Get 2 hours with them. It's been great. And, leading up to that, last year we had on Alexander Dugin right before all this craziness went down with Ukraine and Russia. So, we've been digging into the important hot topics on a deep level for a while.
You've had Millerman on. I spoke with Millerman, and he's the Dugin scholar.
He is. Yeah. He's the leading English English-speaking scholar on Dugin, for sure.
And I didn't get a really good, and I haven't read Dugin, so I didn't get a really good grasp on Dugin's philosophy. It was very different. It seemed like very different than anything I had encountered. It's very, not necessarily anti-liberal or anti-Western, but it seems kind of like it goes in that way. It's very critical.
No, 100%. 100% anti-liberal, but also 100% anti. I'm not a Duginist. I'm a student, right? I've studied and learned and read and talked to him as a way to understand one of the world's most interesting men, because he's a thinker of influence. And if you want to know what's happening and why things are happening, then you got to know. You got to learn. You can't just block it out and be like, la, la, la.
Yeah.
So, he's anti-liberal, anti-fascist, anti-communist. And he's trying to come up with a fourth way that is neither of those three things.
Did you get a sense of that fourth way? What it's comprised of or anchored by?
Yes, it's anchored by a Heidegger's concept of Dasein, which is, if I believe, and I'm not a Heideggerian nor a scholar, and this is one of the most complicated concepts in all philosophy, but my layman's take is that it's the state of being before one is even aware of oneself. And from there, he extrapolates from unique individuality of everyone's Dasein to great civilizations. And he respects and says he respects, and there's continuity and symmetry throughout his thinking. It's congruent, rather, that he believes in the unique individual Dasein of each person, and then collectives, and then civilizations, and then their large spaces that they control. And in his model, he makes space for the United States and for Persia and China and the West.
So Dasein is kind of like the character, the spirit, the soul, the personality, kind of
the most elemental, fundamental part of being. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, Heidegger's complicated stuff. Even the most sophisticated Western philosophers are like, and then I really got to get to Heidegger at some point.
Well, you can't interview him though. He's out of the
but just even
circuit.
Trying to grasp, he's off the podcast circuit.
From what I hear.
He is indeed. But Dugin is a Heideggerian, and he has built a congruent political philosophy off of a concept of philosophy that is well respected and regarded by a lot of people who are in the biz. And I was really intrigued by talking to Dugin because of the same reason, well, not exactly the same, but similar reasons as to why I'm interested in learning about Jeffersonian or Hamiltonian philosophy, because they created a political philosophy, and then they created an actual political
implementation,
space, an actual implementation based in their political philosophy that informed their decision making. And they have done the same thing there in Russia. They've taken, the evolution of Western metaphysics into Heidegger, and they've created a political philosophy based on that. And now they're implementing their political vision. I'm not a supporter of the war. I don't think killing is good. I pushed the wrong button there. I don't think.
Was that your killing is not good sound?
Yes, that's
Pokemon
right, exactly.
found or something.
Right, exactly. That's one of the presets on the Podcaster Pro. I just knocked it with my finger. And it's good to understand how people build political spaces based on political philosophy that has a root in the conversation of Western metaphysics. So it's relevant and it's exciting. And that those kind of conversations that I've had on the podcast are the things that are most exciting to me.
Jordan Hall does a lot of meta thinking. Does that overlap with what we were talking about with the design and trying to find a fourth way, or trying to get a grasp on the political and social order? No.
I think if we dissect a few of the questions you just asked there out, we can say yes to one of them, which is trying to understand the current political and social order and trying to understand on a meta level what is happening. Jordan believes that the advent of social media and the internet and globalization, etc., is as fundamental a change as the printing press or fire or the wheel. And we're going through an incredible transition period, a liminal state, if you were, in such a way that we don't know really where it's going. And the only thing that we could do is try to look at the signs, and try to get a sense of what's emerging, because the social coherence has been thrown out the window, and we're not operating on the same page. We're not all getting top-down direction. He was one of the first people to put together the concept, the Blue Church concept, and he wrote an article back in 2015 or 16 that was profoundly impactful on me.
Blue Church?
Yeah, Blue Church, Red Religion.
Oh.
The Blue Church being the top-down centralized information structure that created resonance and group coherence. And that was controlled. Think Walter Cronkite, think the professor at the front of the classroom, one to many, broadcast of one to many. And then the ability for the many to broadcast to the many has disrupted our group coherence. And now we're all out of phase and searching for our own truths, and who knows what's going to come out of it, because we're in a state of flux. We're in the adaptive valley, as the Weinsteins might say.
It's very stochastic, that's for certain.
It certainly is, man. Whew.
And even the internet, I was thinking about the evolution of how I came into being as an internet persona, because there's Benjamin Boyce and then there's Benjamin Boyce out in the...
It's not the same? You're not 100% congruent?
Well, no, because the camera doesn't catch everything, and I keep I keep grounded outside of here, and I'm aware that I produce who I am, right? I produce who I am to other people, and then the parasocial relationships that happen on top of that. But I was thinking about how the IDW, so-called, was interesting, or a particular moment in time where a certain sort of communication over the internet became legitimate, or legitimate seeming, where you have these big names that are not just big names in the numbers, but there was this kind of turn into the normie land, where a lot of the internet was just joking around and shitposting and trolling and, just expressing things and sharing things. But the podcast circuit, and then and then YouTube too, there was just, it was very plebeian and just kind of pickup stuff. And then with around the IDW stuff, it became apparent that there's legitimate conversations happening in this space. Outside of the mainstream narrative, there are very valid, and respectable people communicating. But we sit, and I'm kind of connected to that. I kind of try to do higher brow stuff, but I'm still riding a wave of a lot of just stuff and just people generating content and trolling each other, and the less respectable kind of stuff that I play with, but I can't get into because I have to stay in a certain level of respectability. So I'm just thinking about that as in the sands are kind of sifting. Like it is really a mix-up, but there are just kind of tiers of discourse that are happening that are off the gatekept, blue churched path, right?
Sure.
And every once in a while they blow up into each other, and they kind of go down and up and stuff.
Yeah, that's for sure. The IDW moment was a good one because it legitimized actual intellectual sense making on the internet. Yeah. Right. And it brought people together who may have not actually come together in person, or had they done so, it would have been at some nerdy conference that nobody else went to or heard of, and there was maybe a recording of it that got translated, transcribed later. It brought sense making because nobody really knows, right? Nobody really knows where we're going or what's going to happen. There's not like a finite plan. There's not a step-by-step, path that we're following.
Come on. Biden knows what's going to happen. They have it all figured it out.
So putting your effort and energy into making sense of the world and collaborating with other people who are doing the same, and exploring and expressing ideas and trying to have some coalesce and see what the group sort of comes to an agreement on, what consensus may be, is exceptionally valuable. And it's not only just valuable in the sense of we need it for the universe, we need it for ourselves. It's fun too. There's like utility to it, and it's a way to engage intellectually that I don't know that was available previously.
But even though it is intellectual, it's still entertainment. It's still fundamentally entertainment. It's fundamentally stimulation. People are attracted to these different personalities because they like them or they are entertained by them. Even though there is sense making, this legitimate kind of important-ish work going on. Still, fundamentally, Brett Weinstein's an entertainer. I'm an entertainer. You're an entertainer. We have to attract, keep, maintain, and then change attention. Like we're still in this attention economy. So I think it's happening within the framework of entertainment. And I don't think entertainment, I'm using entertainment as very broad, as in just things that people pay attention to. It's not like in a classroom where you're paying to get a skill, right? Where it's kind of pared down and kind of more legitimate, more structured, more exclusive because you have to pay and then you get a credit out of it. It should be more utilitarian, but pedagogy is changing over time to be more entertaining now because the kids don't pay attention to anything that's not entertaining, right? So it's all in the bubble of attracting, keeping, and then changing attention.
I think there's a part of me that recoils from the idea of the entertainment, but then I think, okay, there in the old days, people, I don't watch TV, I just watch PBS, right? There's like tiers to it, right? Yeah. So sure, it's entertainment in the sense that you need to capture people's attention. I feel like I've tried to put out a signal and just use that as a way to attract people. And in fact, and maybe this is where we're going here, but I feel like I accidentally spilled over into the more entertainment-y part of the universe that I didn't really know that I was getting in there, and I didn't really want to be there, right? Because I'm a writer first. I'm a creative first. I've been a musician. I've always written. I've got literally stacks of leather-bound journals filled with notes and scribbles, and I've written a book, and I've written 100 blog articles and whatever. Mm-hmm. I have an uncontrollable urge to just express myself creatively. So I have been producing it. I have been putting it out. I mean, I released a record once that sold like 50 whole copies, and I think I probably gave them all away.
Was it like a comedy record? You were like drunk on 4th Street bar or something, and somebody recorded it?
My first underground dance record, man, back in the 90s.
Wait, a dance record?
Yeah, man. I was a DJ and a producer. Okay. And I eventually did some good for-pay work. But yeah, my first one, I just put a studio together, and this is back when you could only do 8-second samples, and that was crazy. You could record 8 seconds digitally. Right. Holy cow.
Wait, so is there something like similar to it, like in the genre of dance music? Like what kind of dance?
Like house music.
Okay. Oh, so just you're at a party and a lot of beats.
Yeah, like DJ nightclub stuff.
Okay.
And so this was, early 90s, right? So I guess the first time I went out to a club like that was like 92. And by 96, I was a professional DJ. I was traveling around the country playing records.
Oh, wow.
So I just have this, like I said, and I cannot stop producing creatively. It just comes out. So I think that the interviews, the podcast, and things like that is just me pursuing my inevitable desire to create and to be inquisitive. The idea to turn myself into a brand or attract people through a created persona never crossed my mind. I mean, the notion of personal branding certainly did, but to create something that wasn't me, probably not. But is it 100% of me? Absolutely not. Right? It's only a fraction of who you are as a person.
But we all have to learn this sooner or later, that once you cross the threshold from being a creator to being somebody on the stage, you are a commodity. Jack Murphy becomes a commodity. You become a token, and then what happens to that token? It depends on a lot of different things, but it's different than you. You created that projections, like the bat signal. Like you threw out the bat signal, right? And you're like, "This is what I'm doing," But once you project it onto the Plato's cave, then it's kind of different than you, right? And then the audience, especially in the Red Religion days, where everybody's making content, there's a lot of people looking for a lot of content, and they don't have. I try to not use people as content because I know that, even though it is a persona, I'm not going to turn it into a content because I try to respect the human being on the other side of that. Other people won't do that. And so it's just like what happened to you. last year was that like you were on this tier of intellectualizing and inquisitiveness and creative, and then there was a surge from another level. There was just a huge surge. It's like phenomenal. I just have to say this, like the Beirut explosion that happened a couple of years ago, just like a complete, just this huge thing. And it's very rare for somebody to be at the epicenter of that. So I don't know how you get through that, how you manage that, and then you don't have any control for a period of time. You don't have any control until the attention goes away. You have no control over that narrative. So that Jack Murphy that they're talking about is different than you, but it's still what you created, you put out there.
Sure. Yeah, that happened by accident, man. Okay, you got to decide, you got to separate between what did I put out into the universe, what was I intending to do, and what was in the forethought of my thinking, which is interview high-level thinkers, drill down on their subjects, study philosophy. I mean, last summer I did a Claremont Fellowship, but it was like one of the most exciting things I ever did. And it's like, I called it nerd camp. I mean, basically we were just reading philosophy and history and sit around talking about it for 8 days in a nice hotel. What happened, and I wasn't expecting, was that, I was the first podcast guest on Tim Pool's IRL, like his nighttime show. I was the very first guest he ever had. And that was back in 2019. And he just kept saying, hey, you want to come back? Sure, I'll come back. And as I kept going back, his show just exploded, right? It just went from being Tim Pool, the guy who talks about the news, having a podcast he's trying out at night, to being Tim Pool being bigger than CNN, right? And it just happened as I was a regular guest. I mean, I'd like to think I contributed some minor, fractional, tiny part of it. But I didn't know that I just in my head, I guess I wasn't aware. I wasn't being smart enough or savvy enough about it. But like, I just didn't know that I went from just like hanging out with my friend Tim at his house, doing a show that like 20,000 people or 30,000 people are watching, to being on primetime television where, I get recognized walking down the street in any city that I go to. That was all unintentional. Right. So I ended up in that space unprepared for stardom, I guess, that I never really was seeking. It just kind of happened. And looking back on it, I wish that I had a little bit more public relations training, or just thinking about it and understanding the different stage that I was on.
Yeah.
Rather than just, being in my basement here interviewing people over the internet.
Well, you've been in different communities over your internet life. You were in the Manosphere. Is that correct to say that you were participating in this thing called the Manosphere? And
definitely.
And that's kind of a very small, very niche community, more or less, right?
Yes.
So there's a different kind of relationship that you have with your audience, a smaller audience, very particular audience, and then the way that people are making connections in that space, and the status, not the game in a cynical sense, but just the way that status operates on that level is different, totally different than where Tim ended up with his thing, and the connections that are going there, and then the amount of attention that's going on in there. And with that attention, it's compounded by, there's not just more eyes, but there's more eyes watching those eyes, because then when something happens up there, there's a lot of people downstream of that want to play with the attention that happens upstream with them. And so there's this huge surge when the levee broke, in your case, of like this older internet, this trollish kind of a non-internet, the older YouTube, where people were just shit posting each other and trolling each other, and just a bunch of people in their basements just, finding material. And then this more legitimate or more astute YouTube that has come over time with more attention, and then Tim Pool and other voices cultivating a space for a different type of attention there. And that's where there was a collapse of worlds back into a previous generation of the internet, from what I see.
Yeah, my internet life has been pretty wild, man. Look, I started on the Manosphere forums back in 2007 or 8 as just anonymous reader, whatever. then maybe I started posting on the forums, and I met some really great guys on those forums back then. Guys that I still know today, guys that have matured and grown out of all that nonsense and are 15 years on in life that are friends of mine still. And I was totally anonymous. I didn't even know what Twitter was. I followed one of my friends from the forums onto Twitter, and we just started writing with Jack Murphy is sort of my name. It's half my name. My name is John Murphy Goldman. I'm named after my grandfather, Jack Murphy, John Murphy. So it's like my name, but it's not my name, but it is my name. And so I used Jack Murphy as sort of a pseudonym, but not really me. And so I was operating in like a non-space.
Yeah.
And then in this like edgy, just say whatever you want. We're just talking shit. Like nobody's really listening, right? It's like a small, totally small community, hundreds maybe of people, maybe thousands of people. And you'd get 100 views or something, and you'd be like, sweet, that was awesome. Yeah. And, then I got doxxed in 2018. And so that's when my personal life and the pseudonymous life got collapsed.
Yeah.
And so that's when my like upstanding, normal, white collar professional job of being a charter school executive and working for a charter school advisor, like a regulatory body, that got collapsed with shit posting manosphere world, where you're just saying things to get a rise out of people. Maybe you believe it, maybe you don't. It's just fun. We're having fun. And then all of a sudden that's like, boy, everything you said back then in 2015 that's your gospel truth. And that's who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's, so I got fired out of my job then. And at that time, man, my prospects for like re-entering the normie professional world seemed pretty dim when you're called a racist, Nazi, whatever. And some of your posts that you think are just fun, anonymous, half true, maybe all true, whatever, not meant for public consumption, really, because nobody's listening, get tacked on to your LinkedIn profile. It's tough. And so at that time, I just was like, okay, I have a small, like single digit thousands Twitter following. Like, well, let me see what I can do with this. And so I rode with Jack Murphy. And so Jack Murphy's dragging with it things from the original doxing, some other things that happened. Mm-hmm. And I go from this like niche manosphere place, which is really a place that only you should pass through if you need to. It's not a place where everybody should go, and it's definitely not a place for anybody to stay, right? It's a phase in life, brief one at that, hopefully. And I guess through my hard work and diligence and being, I think, respectable voice, asking good questions, a voracious consumer of the right kind of content, putting it together, synthesizing it, and like being very diligent about the podcast guests that I've asked to come on. In just a matter of years, I go from being an anonymous ship poster in the manosphere to interviewing the the chief of staff of the Department of the Defense and world leading philosophers and top academics in the world. And it's crazy, actually, when you really think about it.
Yeah, no, not to lose the thread, but it goes back to what we're saying about like the information landscape, or the information exchange landscape, and how that it's not just information, it's persona, it's the human being, and the way that you can do a transit from a tiny little subreddit into an actual legitimate voice, or a voice that's speaking to people who have power in the real world, is you don't know how short the distance is between those two places. And so you don't know how to scale your behavior, or how you reconcile behavior that's, I'm not going to say appropriate, but attenuated to this environment, to a completely different environment with a different set of rules or consequences, let's say. And then how do we go back and see the human being as somebody who can change over time and understand the propriety of these different environments? Or do we always have to be constantly have our nose clean, or constantly anonymous? Is that the only other option? Or is there a way for us to understand how human beings operate in this brave new world?
Yeah, into how you contextualize your behavior. so I used to call this platform power and platform responsibility. Like as the platform grows, you have different responsibilities. The things that you can say when you've got 50 Twitter followers or a blog that no one reads for fun is entirely different than what you can and should be saying if you have 150,000 followers and millions of people are watching what you're doing and saying. I think that's true. And you comport yourself differently in the privacy of your own home, and then with your family, and then with your community. I mean, sure, there's congruent value system, but you still it's like you come home and you take your shoes off, right? Like that's, if you're at your home on the internet and you can take your shoes off and you do, well, that's great. But the trail is permanent. The trail is permanent. And when you do move from one space, I like how you said that, how like the distance can be very short. I think that I'm a interesting example of how short it can be and the perils that come along with it. But I can't, a little tangent here, I can't separate in my mind what I should or shouldn't have done differently. Yes, I know there are a lot of things I wish I didn't do. But then again, were the things that I shouldn't have done the ones that shorten that distance? It's like the things that you do or say get you to where you want to go, but then you regret having done or said them. I can't sometimes separate the two. Yeah.
Well, you could reverse engineer it by you can go through action by action, but I mean the explosiveness. Again, I go back to that Beirut explosion. Do you remember that when that happened?
Which
it
one?
was 2019 or 2020. There was this something exploded on the dock, and it was modern day
that one. Okay.
Beirut. So there's 40 or 50 cell phone footage of this huge explosion, and then later on, a bunch of damage. Just phenomenal thing to watch. But you're like, what happened? And then some company in Britain, I think it is in Britain, did a beautiful reconstruction. They took it all together. They figured all the photos, and they went down to that warehouse, and they figured out what was in that warehouse, what happened. And the warehouse had created a bomb without knowing it. They had a bunch of fertilizer, a bunch of tires, and then a bunch of fireworks. It was a perfect bomb. It was this huge bomb. And they didn't, there was, people were warning about that, but nobody knew that was going to happen. So, and to make a metaphor for your case, like there was the explosion. There's a lot of very intense material that just grabbed attention to it. Phenomenal. Like sorry to say, phenomenal. Pow. But then you're like, how did that bomb get built? And what were the different things? How were they put together? And to what degree is that something that we can learn from on how to create, be more intentional in how we create ourselves in the internet? And understand to what degree we can go from one place to another, and what's going to stick with us, what doesn't stick with us, what's important, what's valuable to the audience, what do people want, necessarily need to know about us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, forensically, you created a bomb that collapsed the world. It collapsed the world's attention, not on the level of Will Smith getting slapping Chris Rock, but that was like one moment where one thing happened. It shook the world. Everybody looks at this thing for 1 day, 2 days, right? You're every once in a while, we get like, it's like the lottery. We get put in that place. And you're like, what happened there? And the weird thing about the internet is that everybody picks it apart, and then everybody theorizes about all these different things. There's forum threads just trying to figure out, who is this guy? CIA? They're calling you like a glowy. I don't even know what a glowy is or what that means. Like, and I don't want to back you in a corner. You don't have to answer any of these questions. It's just that you attracted so much attention in such a phenomenal short amount of time that I don't know how one deals with that, and then how one kind of figures out the rubble, reconstructs it, and then moves on from them, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of good questions in there and a lot to think about. The attention. It was a bomb. And I tried, speaking in generalities here, I tried to clean up some of my history. And I thought I had done a decent job, but I guess I hadn't. things were stored in Russian BitTorrents and in places that this is what people are telling me, that I just had no idea to even look. No idea. All the casual searching, your regular Google searches, 20 pages deep, whatever. I thought I had done a pretty good job because I realized I had gone from one universe to the next. And I didn't know that I was gonna. Nobody told me I was gonna be like famous, right? Nobody told me I would walk down the street in any city in America and have somebody walk up to me and be like, "Hey, you Jack Murphy." Walking on the trails of Bryce Canyon with my kids. You know what I mean? Like crazy. I had no idea. And I did know in the back of my mind, it was always kind of lingering. Like, okay, there's a bomb here, perhaps. And it happened. I turned the internet off December 29th and didn't turn it back on again, basically, until February. And people tell me I was like top 10 trending Twitter in the United States, maybe even worldwide. It went so big and so bad that every single family member got doxxed. All of my kids got doxxed. We've got death threats. We have open police investigations to the death threats. Just torrents and torrents and torrents of abuse and hate. Pictures of my house and address and details of all my immediate family members' lives picked through it and poured over and posted to the internet and totally disclosed and doxed. And the question that I ask myself is why? Like, why did people care? Like, I wasn't out there hurting anybody or breaking any laws, or in fact, me, I just had spent a year traveling the country hosting brunches so that people could come together and make friends with each other and build community. And at the end of every single one, we did 16 events in 2021. And at the end of every single one, I was like, man, we are spreading joy. That's what we're doing. We're just bringing people together, giving them a little booze and a little food, and just letting them meet each other and make friends and connections and just spreading joy. And in the liminal order, we're just helping people get together to build businesses, to move their families, we can talk about that if you want, like amazing success stories with guys in the liminal order. Me going on Tim Pool's, he's like, "Hey, you want to come be the first guest on my show?" I'm like, "Sure, that'll be fun." We didn't go on this show to get rich and famous. Tim didn't pay me anything, which is fine. It was great. I never asked for it. He never offered. It was fine. No complaints there. The question became why? Why were people, to me, why did people want to do this damage, to take such glee in it? And then the replication of it. I caught a few glimpses at the beginning there. There were just scores of people doing videos upon videos of repeaters. This guy did a video, so I did a video about this guy, and I'm doing a video about that guy, right? And just people with clear agenda. And true, you're right. Calling me like I'm a Fed, or like I'm undercover, or I'm a Mossad agent, or like paid opposite. Like, bro, let me tell you, I am literally just a guy. I'm just a guy in Washington, D.C. who worked really hard and put out a bunch of content that people liked. I mean, that is the extent of my crime. To why that was such a driving force for people to take such glee in, and I'm talking about millions of people, right? Like millions of people. Yeah. My buddy texted me, and he knows internet history as well or better than anybody. He says, literally, without a doubt, the most psychotic internet takedown I've ever seen. And I'm perplexed, honest.
Well, there's probably like mythological, archetypal, like the buttons that were pushed with that bomb, because you have masculinity.
Yeah.
What is a man? That's a hotly contested thing. A lot of people are fighting over that, and even men are fighting with men over that, right? So there's a salience there. There's a through line there. Then there's the the actual, is her name Sydney? The actual event. It's shocking. There's that shock value, but that's just the Will Slips, the Will Smith slap. That's just like what gets everybody's attention. But then there's just this ripple effect across this particular part of the internet, and I think it has to do with the Venn diagram overlapping of like IDW-ish or post IDW stuff, and the Gamergate, like kind of the subgenre of shitposting, trolling, Gamergate, kind of Kotaku in action and Tumblr in action people who make a lot of commoner content. It was just those two worlds colliding. And then you just became the focal point of that.
Yeah. I never wanted that audience. I never wanted to be engaged with that audience. I want to talk about nerdy stuff on a nerdy level, in depth and at length. And, you know, maybe I should have bailed off the Tim Pool show once it was getting so big, but I didn't know. And again, Lydia, just my friend. Ian, just my friend. Tim, just my friend.
They're good people.
They are. They're great people. I have nothing but wonderful things to say about them, and they've been kind and awesome to me through the whole thing, and since 2019, and before. You know, I've known Tim for many years, going all the way back to 2016. You know, during the first Trump campaign.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, that's when we first met, and yeah, I don't know, dude.
Well, so what now then? I mean, it's just coming back. I guess you start over. Like, what's your mindset on this? You're just going to focus on the work, head down, interview people?
So the first thing I did is just take care of myself, right?
Yeah.
Get right with spiritual elements in my life, you know, as confusing and chaotic as they may be. You know, I don't know. I'm on a journey. I'm on a process of exploration I've been on for a number of years, and I don't know where it is, but I've been praying quite a bit. You know, this is back, you know, just, I mean, I still pray, but like the initial, like, what do I do? Right. Take care of myself immediately, take care of my immediate family immediately. Make sure that my health and my sleep and my fitness are good. And, you know, I'm not ashamed to admit, like, called up my old therapist. I'm like, it's time to fire up those weekly sessions again, you know, and then reach out to the extended family and to my friends and actual real friends, and shore those up. And then it was just grief, man. There's a lot of grief. You know, we spent a lot of time working. We put in a lot of energy traveling, 19 states, I think, something like that, more than 20 states maybe, in 2021. All these events, all this work, all these connections that I made, all these relationships that I poured a lot of energy into. And in one moment, you know, a lot of those bridges just went up in smoke, man. Oof. And so there's definitely grieving, mourning. I mean, it's grief, you know. But you know, you process through it. Therapist says I did it very quickly. It's only been 3.5 months or something, right? It was the end of December.
Yeah.
So, you know, process through it and then get back to work. You know, so
you know, I've been mini canceled. I cultivate mini cancellations just to get used to it, you know, and check myself and keep humble and grounded. But there is in the internet, it's built out of emotions, and it's built out of very shallow emotions, very strong but very shallow, very bright, very brief emotions. And one of those emotions that is just a human constant is humiliating somebody else. Like, people gather around, like, this is a time to pillory, this is the time to humiliate. And being humiliated, there's two sides of that, right? There's the people who are doing the humiliation, and then there's the person who's humiliated. What are you humiliated by? Are you humiliated by their humiliation, or are you humiliated by your own actions? And if you are humiliated by your own actions, then you're humiliated that's between you and yourself, or you and your God, or whatever. It has nothing to do with the audience anymore. I mean, it does when you want to engage back into them, but that humiliation is it's not really a social. It is to a certain extent to humiliation, because we're social creatures, and you go back to the savannah, we had to humiliate each other to make sure that certain behaviors did not occur to continue our survival. So that was just a part of how human beings kind of dealt with their social environment and the realities of their other environment. We're in a different time now, but that programming's still there. But really the humiliations between the people that you directly affected, you and the people you directly affected, and then you and yourself and who you are, and then checking back in. And the process of being humiliated, the process of becoming humble, and the process of working through that is between you and yourself, you and your close people. And it's not between you and the audience, people who don't know you, people who don't care about you. Mm-hmm. But because it's amplified so much, it's really difficult for our minds to make that distinction between like the world hates me and like, no, it's not the world. It's just this fake virtual world, you know?
Right, man. There's a lot to address there. One, do I regret some of my actions in the past? Yes. Am I ashamed of any of them? No. So like I was never feeling any personal humiliation about what I had done or anything. Nothing. Do I regret it? Sure. Would I advise people to do some of the things that I did? Probably not. I'd advise against it. But like, am I ashamed? No. And do I have any negative, like lingering feelings from it? No, absolutely not. The humiliation, in fact, in some ways, there was a straw man created about me, right? Like it's interesting. You bring up the persona. And there's at once me, and then there's maybe a persona that I cultivated. But I felt like it was really congruent and authentic with who I was. And I think that was part of my charm to people. I was always very open and honest about my struggles with my divorce and with getting more time with my kids and what it's like to be a dad and just growth and change and evolution and going from Democrat to deplorable and all these things. Like I was just very authentic and open, cards on the table. Right, because I started writing as a Sood and then kept writing as if I were a Sood. And I think that was part of the appeal. I have felt like that there's been a straw man created of me that then was burned in effigy a million billion times over. And so I get frustrated sometimes because of the way that there's just an artifact of me out there that's not me, that I didn't create, that doesn't resonate with who I am as a person, but yet everyone is engaging with it, even my friends and people in my network and people who I associated with and whatnot. And it's just been burned. It's just a creation of me that's not me, that's been burned and people pointing and laughing at. And then I try to do my normal work, and then it just flows in. People continuing, and now to me, it's just noise, right? It's just spam. It's like I delete, I block. But what's troubling, and this is the hardest part of it all for me, has been the stress or damage that has been brought to people who had associated with me by virtue of their association with me, right? And I think it hurt a lot of relationships that I had in that regard. It may have brought damage to some people. I don't know any specific instances, but it may have. And I felt guilt about that, right? Like there were a number of people in my network that I reached out to, and I was like, look, I'm sorry that all this is happening. Because I really was. Like, I am sorry that happened. I regret about that. It's out of my control. Like if somebody wants to make up a facsimile of me and then spend weeks, months, even still to this day, trying to tear it down and get views and clout and gain off of it, I can't stop them. But it makes it difficult for me sometimes to continue on with my current work. But I'll say this. We just opened up recruitment into the LO for the first time since the incident. People have called it the Jack attack or the porn incident. There were a number of different things.
There's a lot of memes. It was very memeable, man. I'm so sorry.
Oh yeah, no, that's just people I'm close to using those terms. And what's happened is it's created a very powerful and valuable filter. And for me, I'm turning this into the best thing that's ever happened to me, right? It's filtered out all of my relationships with people who were transactional, who just wanted to ride on my clout, or who just wanted to get views, or wanted to feel like they were getting close to Tim, or whatever the case may be, or who thought in their minds that they had built up this vision and this idea of who I was that was then destroyed. Okay, well, that wasn't me. It's not me. If that bothers you, okay, have fun over there. And, the guys in the LO, they know that we're there for the values and we're there for the brotherhood and for action and being courageous and honest and loyal and working towards sovereignty. And they know that was like a separate phenomenon that just exploded in the universe. And if they can't see past the fact that there was some nefarious action, and I don't mean like a conspiracy or anything, but just like people taking glee in the destruction of another human being, right? Like dancing around and like making videos and cheering and being, yeah, look at, he's ruined.
Mm-hmm.
Look at him burn. It's amazing. Ah, they were all so excited about it. It was like, it was crazed. And, shift gears a second. What you said about our evolution and about humiliation and whatnot. In reading Luke Burgess's book "Wanting" about Rene Girard, he laid out what happened to me in very clear terms: the mimetic contagion and scapegoating. Right. So, what happens when there are groups of people together with different ideas and challenges and differences and acrimony among them? If they can find a scapegoat, it allows them to purge the negative energy that they have within their group, within their relationships and the adjacencies and such that may not be congruent with who they are, what they want. And if they can all then pick one scapegoat and burn the witch or run the person out of town or hang him from the gallows or whatever it is a well-documented historical phenomenon that's happened all throughout time, where people will just pick somebody and whether they're guilty or not, just burn them at the stake. And the people that do the burning, they feel a release.
Mm-hmm. And bonding between each other for a period of time.
Yeah. And they feel a release, and then they come together for a period of time. It resolves intra-group conflict by picking a scapegoat and destroying them. And then, it goes away, and then they have time to build up their intergroup conflict all over again and not have a scapegoat or be desperately seeking scapegoat. I became a scapegoat. I'm not entirely sure why, and there's a lot of ways to debrief it, but I did, and I experienced it, and it was profoundly impactful on my life.
They went really deep. And doing research for this, people went really deep into your past, and
oh my God,
stuff that had nothing to do with the explosive materials, like they went all the way through. They went
10, 15 years into my past trying to just trying to recreate every element of my life. Like I read some of the stuff and they're like, this guy's a liar. He didn't do Muay Thai. I'm going to contact the regulatory body that he said he fought in to try to find out. I'm like, yeah, I have the medals, dude. Like I did it. Or, digging into my charter school work in the past, and they found, an article that this super woke activist wrote that painted everybody who was involved in charter schools in a bad light. They're like, oh, this is gospel. It was very fascinating to see the way that these people would take something that was obviously written by a hostile actor who in any other circumstance they would have said that person is woke, I hate that person, whatever, but take exactly what they said as being true, and they're trying to say that I scammed charter schools because I got paid $1.1 million over 7 years. I'm like, I don't know, man, just do the math. That's a pretty reasonable professional salary for a CEO and executive director in a nonprofit world, right? I was underpaid, if anything. And they went back into my family's lives, into every court record that's available, trying to part. I don't know why. And it wasn't just internet weirdos, right? These things percolated up into big high profile channels and big high profile folks. It wasn't just some weird guy who's I don't know, digging in for some reason because obsessive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so the news cycle with this stuff and the pickup content that we're doing. When a story breaks, a lot of people's attention turns to it, and I don't know to what degree we're ever going to have a gentleman's agreement or get wise to how this actually impacts human beings. Until you're in the hot seat, I don't think you know what it feels like. I really don't. You know, I've been in the hot seat, like very contained little things where I use a pun on the word whore, and then I get a bunch of women really mad at me for 3 days, you know, like I feel it, you know, it's very contained, very radical little group, you know, and then they purge all their, you know, negative energy out of their group, and they have a peace for a time. I watch it. They have peace for a time, and then they start bitching at each other again until they find another person to go after. But when it happens on another scale, like the scale of your event was on a completely different tier, then I don't know, like you'd have to be a politician, and you're not a politician. You're just a podcast guy. So like the incongruence between the attention and your impact was like phenomenally out of whack.
Right. There's no sense of proportionality, no sense of justice. And this is the mob, right? This is the mob.
The crowdsourced,
The crowdsourced open source swarm. I mean, there it is. It's in action right now. We can see it all over the place. And I mean, people will laugh when I said this, but like the same phenomenon that happened to me is what is happening right now with Putin and Russia, for right or wrong, better or worse, is the same open source, crowdsourced swarm trying to cancel, disconnect, break people's connections, you know, dislodge them from the network, isolate them, shame them, and like strip away their power in a way that has no particular leader, and it has no sense of proportionality. It has no sense of mortality, right? Like all the people participating in the you know, takedown of me or whatever you want to call it, none of them felt vulnerable. And there
was no back and forth. There was no equality between you two.
It's almost as if they're immortal. They can just act with impunity. And there's definitely no sense of justice because it's a group thing, and no one is leading it with any sort of agency.
Definitive, outcome.
Right.
There's no outcome other than burn you.
Burn. And this is one thing that makes me laugh is, yeah, dude, they gave me like the Trump treatment. They gave me like world leader level treatment, like historical figure level treatment. Like, come on, dude.
They could have treated you like a very like Michael Jackson's statue whenever he made that big statue of himself.
Yeah, and it continues on. You know, like memeing me with Will Smith. I'm like, okay, like. Grammy winning, amazingly successful global figure, and they're just like, Will Smith, Jack Murphy, same level, let's talk some more shit. Like I don't understand that. I wish I could have reaped the rewards of the status level that was afforded to me by the energy and effort people put in.
You know, if this was all done on blockchain, you would have gotten all the credit every time your name was mentioned, right? Every time your product was repurposed, you would have been paid, you know, in blockchain
handsomely. And you know, I think that it's a very good example of negative the dysfunction. Clout. Negative clout. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking like there's a currency of clout, but you have negative clout, but you still have clout, but it's a negative clout because you're a meme now. Oh, not you, but Jack Murphy, right? You're like if Twitter made an emoji of you, you know, like they do every once in a while in a movie, and then you got like you were salient. You're the same thing as that Ukraine flag that means nothing but can totally identify somebody as a part of a tribe. You know, has nothing to do with Ukraine. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. People chasing clout, views, money. People made a bunch of money off of it. Lots of money. Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars made off of trying to hurt me. And I guess my message to people who, and I doubt that the universes really overlap here, but if you're following somebody who makes money off of hurting people that really haven't done anything wrong, then you should probably reconsider why you're engaging with those people, right? Like, why your eyeballs, your attention is paying them to do bad things. Like, you're a part of that ecosystem. Don't be a part of that ecosystem unless you like to, unless you want to.
Yeah. Well, at least I guess be honest about it.
right?
Yeah.
The revealed status interpretation is something that makes me chuckle.
What
too.
was this?
Revealed status interpretation? Like, you don't hopefully punch down, right? You're not looking around for people that have less clout, less power, less influence, less standing. You're not going around just trying to find people to hurt. You think these people who put in the time to try to take me down, they must have been thinking that I was in some elevated status from them, right? Because how else are you going to gain clout if not by attacking somebody with elevated status?
The playing field isn't like that. It's not like you're above them. It's just you're salient. Well, Jack, I keep on thinking of two. There's the person I'm talking to, and then there's the person that we're talking about, which is kind of two different people because we're talking about what other people are talking about, which is not you, right? So there's this weird collapse that I have to do in my brain, but we're just going to say you or
it's actually a third one. It's actually a third one, right?
There's
there's me as a human, there's me as who I put out as a content creator, and then there's me as who they created.
Yeah, and they're all collapsed because they all they affect you, and then it's just this big thing.
And to say that they've collapsed without getting into personal details is collapse in the most intimate and personal ways, right?
Like 9/11 style.
Like the closest
Steel
personal
beams.
relationships, family relationships, things like this have all been tainted by that. And it's been, like a total collapse, like a what is the yeah, exactly. It just sucked it all into one thing. And now, look, this already has been a positive for me in many ways. I am completely cleansed at this point, right? Like, all of my worst, darkest secrets in the universe are out there. Anything I've ever done in the universe is out there. But don't stop laughing. Everyone knows anything that they want to know.
Yeah.
And so that filter is up. And so anybody that comes into my life now, anybody that enters into my sphere, anyone that they're pre-vetted by this phenomenon that happened. Yeah. And you know what? That's good. No ticking time bombs, nothing to conceal, nothing to avoid, nothing. I've been reborn in a way.
So there's when we go and we judge somebody, there's different things that people find salient to judge. One thing that when I read through your articles that it perturbed me was your expression of a view of women that I just didn't like. It seemed like there were certain articles that you wrote, maybe about feminists or something, about really degrading women. I just have a really negative reaction to that. So I'm just wondering, and I don't judge you, but I just have a negative reaction. That was the most negative thing that I saw. So
the feminist need rape article.
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk about that.
Yeah.
That was one. It was poorly written, right? If you got to go back, it was all the way back in 2015.
And this is Manosphere. You're basically as synonymous. You're shitposting. Yeah. I understand
totally shitposting.
Okay, I understand the style. Okay,
totally shitposting, and it was in response at the time to Milo Yiannopoulos was giving feminist shit, and feminists were kink shaming women for making their own choices and whatnot of how they want to engage sexually with people. And I was writing at the time about dominance and submission, BDSM type stuff, in of itself a construct, right? Like BDSM and dominant, submissive, like sex play, role play like that is in of itself a construct. It's a scenario that you willingly step into. And then when it's done, you step away from it. And it's not who you are. It's not your whole life. It's a fantasy.
So just like the internet then, basically.
Yeah. So it's a construct within a construct within a construct. And the poorly executed takeaway of that was that if feminists would only just acknowledge that perhaps that there is not a complete power symmetry in every relationship, but that sometimes women and men want the man to take the lead and the woman to follow. And it can be done in a very healthy and constructive way, which resonates, I think, with traditional ideas of marriage. And a lot of high functioning relationships are in that regard. First, the captain and the first mate. And so that's really, it was just meant to be a troll piece, to be like, if only feminists would just relax and like get involved in some sort of sexual relationship where they could submit, that they would find some power in that submission and maybe even some joy in that. It wasn't meant to be misogynist or hate women or anything like that. No, man, I've got daughters. I've got a woman that I've been with now for 8 years. We're getting married this year. I love my mom, I have no hate for women in me at all. I love them. And in fact, there was an exhortation to women, maybe perhaps finding happiness in a relationship in which the man follows, or the man leads and the woman follows, which is antithetical to the feminist proposition, which suggests that women should be the idealized version of men and that they don't need men, et cetera, et cetera. So, it was poorly executed. And it was meant to be provocative, and it was only meant to be seen by just a few hundred people. And then I deleted it, and then I took it down as part of that platform responsibility I was talking about. It was an appropriate thing to be transmitted out into the universe on a broad scale.
Yeah.
It was only meant to be for a very small niche who got the joke already.
Yeah.
Right. It was like an inside joke for people that got broadcasted to the universe. So I deleted it, man. I deleted all that stuff years ago, and it only resurfaced because people had kept it, people had archived it, people had kept screenshots of it. And every time my profile got a little bit bigger, they would like just reintroduce it into the flow as a way to try to chip away at me. People dug through my internet trash to find inside jokes with my boys that they didn't get in order to paint me in a poor light. And that goes back to the lack of justice or proportionality or whatever that we were talking about.
There's a lot of I'm just trying to sort through all the information that I have in my head now. You've said before when you came on my channel that the manosphere is something, it's a very temporary thing, something to pass through. I'm wondering why, and I'm wondering if there's something about the values that were inherent or are inherent in what was or is the manosphere that have stuck to you, that you think, well, that's not part of me. That was something I was wrestling with or engaging with, but that's not part of me. And if that is part of the bomb that was created, if there's something in the manosphere or masculinity or dominance and submission, these ideas that...
Well, I think I would separate masculinity out from... And remind me to come back to your question, because I'm not going to answer it right this second. Okay. Masculinity, we're pulling this out for a second, because masculinity is not a bad thing. In fact, masculinity is something that's been studied and promoted throughout all time. It's Lindy as it gets, right? And our working definition in liminal order of masculinity, we've studied this through Socrates and Aristotle and through Hobbes and Locke and into Nietzsche and beyond to come up with a path or an understanding of what it means to be a man. And it begs the question, or raises the question, why do we even need to study what it means to be a man? And part of that is because those ideas have been hidden to our boys today. And they were hidden to me as someone who was raised in a non-religious, totally liberal, just follow your dreams, do whatever you want, the libertarian-esque environment where no one ever talked to me about Aristotelian excellences. No one ever talked to me about honor and courage and virtue and what it means to build and to create. That was something that had to be discovered. And the manosphere played a very vital role in this one area.
In connecting you to that.
In connecting me to the notion that I had obscured from me what it meant to act in a masculine way or to be a confident, powerful male. Because think about when I'm raised, I'm born in 76, grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and then into this feminist blow up. And we all know that it's been obscured, right? Like we all know that the feminization of society is something that's been ongoing for some time, and it's manifesting itself now in, our socially contagious, trans epidemic and all these things, where it really comes down to the essence of trying to destroy identity as a meaning, or using identity rather as a plane of meaning. And I will credit, which is different from using, say, like Hobbesian Lockean plane of meaning, which is, survival, or which is different than using an Aristotelian plane of meaning, which is the good life and acting with honor for the polis, right? And so I didn't know any of those things. So I will credit the manosphere to triggering me into trying to understand what's going on in society and culture and why. And that thread that I pulled on in the manosphere led me to studying Aristotle and to studying the different planes of meaning that have been used throughout time, and how we're on now to using identity, which is a postmodern concept. In fact, it's Nietzschean. We can talk about that later, but it's that this is the plane of meaning we're operating on, and why that's bad for society, and what do you do as a response to it. So I would credit the manosphere for triggering me to even consider these notions and then to seek the answers. The problem with the manosphere is when you just get stuck in the pickup part of it, when you just get stuck in the, like, how do I talk to girls? How do I have sex with many girls as I possibly can, et cetera, et cetera. And that part is, I think, misogynistic. And I think that part of it is bad. Now, should guys be equipped in, like, how to actually talk to people? Yes, basic social skills are important. But should we be teaching guys, like, how to bed as many women as they possibly can? No, absolutely not. And the contradiction within the manosphere is a toxic one, where they'll at once say, go out there, bang as many girls as you can, but then when it's time to get married, only marry a girl who's a virgin or has had one partner. And what that does is, by virtue of the structure there, is create what I call the army of useless sluts. So their whole perspective requires an army of useless sluts in society that are just there to be used as a stepping stone to your manhood until you decide to marry a virgin. Okay, all that is crap, and I don't want to be associated with it. And anybody that's promoting that stuff, I don't want any association with that at all. And I left it many years ago, and I had deleted anything that was even related to that, and I took it all down. And in fact, even back then, I would write about the value of being at the head of your dining room table. I would write about the value. One of my earliest pieces was called Red Pill in Love. And it was controversial and didn't have much resonance there, because how can you be red pill in love? And I talked about Jonathan Haidt's happiness hypothesis, about the difference between passionate love, companionate love, and how the area under the curve for companionate love is much higher and greater. And I was always encouraging people into long-term relationships. I myself have been in one, and I love it. We're getting married, and I can't wait for the rest of our life together. And so, to the extent that the manosphere is a way station for people that may not have a dad or a strong role model to just give them confidence, or as a place to learn about some of our societal ills, it had value. But that last part, to learn about our societal ills, is no longer necessary, because the critique of feminism and its impact on society is now a mainstream concept, right? James Lindsay has done a tremendous job at pushing that out there, and other people. I mean, I had a part to do with it myself, but James is taking it to a whole nother level. That's just out there. It's just general. You if you're 16 years old and you're on the internet, you get memes about it. Like you understand. You understand about how everything's racist and everything's sexist and all these things. Mm-hmm. But we didn't know that. The manosphere was a great sense-making place back 15 years ago. But anybody that's still stuck in there now is sick, twisted. Mm-hmm. You know, you're warped. And to the extent that they're now also funneling in new young guys, I think it is bad, because the most highest value of it all was the sense-making element, to figure out that the feminist thing, and then the plane of identity as meaning for the world, the postmodern concept is, sussing that out was an important value, or was of value to society. But if it were me, I'd say cap that up, put it away. It's done. I moved on. The world should be moving on as well, and those man boys in there should be moving on as well. And I've been dragging that baggage around with me for a long time. It sucks. But at the same time, I would not have had come to being a early discusser, sense maker about these concepts without having gone through that. And then not only discussing it, but then putting it into practice. Like, what are we going to do to combat this? Well, let's get together a bunch of guys who find value in, traditional masculinity. And to anticipate a critique or to address a critique that has been placed on me, people say, Giga Chad snake oil salesman teaching disaffected youths how to be a man. I mean, nothing could be farther from the truth when it comes to that. Inside the LO, there's no me teaching people how to be a man. What we're doing is putting out a signal of like, do you believe in the value of masculinity and the power of building and creating and doing with honor and courage and loyalty? Oh, you believe in that? Great. Let's get together in a brotherhood, which is another name for community, and just operate in a sane, healthy way. Almost every single one of our guys in the LO is married with kids. Mm-hmm. We talk about fatherhood. We talk about how to raise our daughters, how to raise our sons, how to build a better world for them, and how to focus on our family and be good leaders for our family. It goes back to the sense that people built a straw man up of me just by association with the term masculinity, and how they've been trying to tear that down. And I don't remember what your original question was.
Well, you answered whatever I was going for anyways. There's just a through line, because some of the material that surfaced was about you humiliating women, or in one way or another, directly or rhetorically. And it just, I think that fueled the humiliation. It's like, oh, this guy likes humiliation. Let's turn the tables around on him. And so when we talk about BDSM or sub-dom stuff, which I don't understand. It's never been salient to me. I just wonder if that translates, or if that how that operates within a context of consensuality or whatever, and then how it explodes when it's projected onto the...
Yeah, it's complicated stuff, man. I wrote one of the very first pieces I ever wrote was called A Framework for Sexual Health. And I was promoting within the manosphere, and nobody seemed to like this, a model for sexual health that had at the top of it consent, honesty. These are the components: honesty, consent, protection from disease and pregnancy, mutual benefit, shared values. And the last one's escaping me. But these are the ideas: honesty, consent, shared values,
communication,
communication, and mutual benefit, mutual enjoyment, etc. And nobody brings that up when they're trying to give me a hard time. That I've been preaching about this for years, or did it years ago. And again, the people's recoiling at the sense of like, is it bad for a man to humiliate a woman upon request, is the last part. And it's a failure to just acknowledge female agency, which goes back to the whole Feminists Need Rape article, which was really a statement about female agency. It was an article in support of female agency. There are women out there who actually enjoy engaging in that type of behavior in a controlled environment, with consent, with honesty, with predetermined boundaries, and as a thing that's a construct, but not your life. And I know it's difficult intellectually, perhaps, for people to wrap their mind around that.
That doesn't, in your experience, that doesn't reverberate outside of that. Is that, can you contain that in?
Yeah, of course. Because what's interesting about that is the man is providing a service. It's interesting. It's a performance. It's a service, because it's been requested. And then you have to act on behalf of the person who requested it. There's so many dynamics to it that are intricate and difficult to explain. But if there's someone that's come to you and said, I'm interested in this, would you do this for me? And then you talk about how and when and possibly you could do it, and when it starts and when it ends, and what the rules and the guidelines are. Well, then in a sense, you're actually providing a service to somebody else. And yes, it ends. Of course it ends. The people that know me, man, they know me on an intimate, real personal level. I mean, I'm a giving, generous, kind, supportive, loving, caring, very, just, I want to lift people up. That's all I want to do. And that was part of it, man. it was part of helping people at the time. And it's not part of my life anymore. I have a very boring ass vanilla life.
Well,
Love
it
ya.
was a little exciting for a bit there.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that, it brings up a good point, which is I had left all that shit behind years ago. And I had already been working to build a whole productive, valuable, generous kind. Not that I wasn't before, but even outwardly and publicly in all these ways, I had been long down a different path. And if someone were to have critiqued me, in December or whatever, and say, you should change your life and you should do X, Y, Z, I'd be like, bro, I've been doing that for years already. Can't we just let it go? Even though you don't understand it and it's not what you're saying and it's a total straw man. Nevertheless, even your prescription to the straw man is what I've already been doing and what I have been preaching, what I've been writing about and what the podcast has been about. Mm-hmm. And so, it's like, it was like an exogenous shock, a bomb, you're right, that had been built in the pieces, just sitting around waiting for some thread to put them all together and then to explode them. But you have to ask, it's like, why would somebody want to take you down? Well, because I was doing good. I was not like doing well, but like doing good things for people. And all this, and I think perhaps it was difficult for people to accept that.
Just to add to that, like I was going through Kiwi Farms doing research, and in the middle of this, like finding everything bad about Jack Murphy thread, somebody's like, I showed up to his brunch and it was a great time. I just have to say that. We all had a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But nobody cared. Right? And those Kiwi Farm guys, they're psychopaths, those guys. And now by saying that, I'm going to unleash.
Well, we're going to, I say that because I know that this is going to end up in that thread anyway. So, I appreciate the time to actually talk to the man that everybody's talking about. Having actually participating in the conversation like we're doing right now is much better than, researching this or seeing the thing happen for me, from my perspective. And also I hope that this actually adds to the conversation, extends people's understanding, diffuses some of the smoke and adds some clarity, Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. And Benjamin, I haven't talked to anybody else since. And you reached out around the time, and I was like, "Yeah, bro, I'm not really in the place for that just yet." Because like I said, there was definitely grief and loss and mourning to go through.
Well, and shock,
and I went through it, and I went through it, and I did it. And look, it's a testament to the power of health and fitness, having a spiritual life, connection to a higher power, having a strong, committed family, a strong, committed partner in your woman. Being dedicated to your family, having a network of people that you can lean on. And now I've been able to metabolize this drama and sort of, give nutrient to my own soul and hopefully to others in a way that's pretty rapid, right? Like, I think a lot of people might have been down for the count for this, but podcast is up, Twitter is up, LO is open, things are going, we're all moving forward. And, it's like, it's already fading into the rearview mirror for me. Whether or not it will for others remains to be seen.
Well, speaking of the podcast, is there? Do you have like a map of where you're going? Do you kind of have an idea of what you're trying to describe or explore? Is there a theme, consistency, other than reorganizing the world perfectly? Is there?
It's always been about me exploring my own intellectual interest.
Yeah.
And in many ways, that's what my Twitter feed has always just been about. I quote books often and show my underlines. It's really about asking questions of people that are writing things that are interesting and salient today. So coming up, I got Luke Burgess, right? Wanting. Hey, we're going to talk about Rene Girard. We're going to talk about mimetic contagion. We're going to talk about scapegoating because it's relevant today. I've got another guy coming up, Adam Ellwanger, and we're going to talk about the process of transformation. And the varying, the sort of two different kinds of transformation that there is. There's the return to who you were in the first place, and then there's the transformation into something new. And Adam argues that right now on the new right or the post-liberal right, they're trying to return to something and transform all at the same time, and it's not actually going to work. So these are just the salient current subjects that I want to talk about. I had John Robb on. We talked about Russia. We talked about this network swarm. Jordan Hall, we talked about, there's just sort of the meta sense making of everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just continue to talk about things that are salient and talk to people who are writing and investigating these salient subjects and put them together. It's nerdy, man.
Yeah.
The podcast is nerdy. It's deep, and we go deep on people's subject material. And if you want to get along for that ride, man, I'd love to have you. If you're coming to my channel thinking that we're going to talk about today's most current events and shit talk other YouTubers, you're going to be really disappointed, because that ain't my game.
That's not your market. That's okay. Other people are doing that. Other people are fulfilled.
Yeah. I'm not interested in that at all. Yeah. So I do appreciate you giving me a chance to just talk through this in a way that's kind, right? Mm-hmm. I've had many requests, and I've said no to all of them so far, except for you, because I figured you would bring your typical sort of just general compassion and kindness to the conversation, and you have. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for being vulnerable and just speaking about it. You could have not done that. We could have just been abstract the whole time, but I think I appreciate you expressing yourself directly to me, and then also going forward with your life and just being willing to be vulnerable again on this, what do we call it? Like this sadomasochistic construct of the internet.
This hellscape that I've at once asked for it, but also just been thrust into it. Like I wasn't a public figure until they doxed me, and then I became one, and then I had to roll with it, and then here we are. Sort of I asked for it, sort of I didn't, but it's my life today, and I'm going for it.
You won the lottery.
Some lottery.
Like what's the name? Oh, I can't remember. The short story woman wrote the lottery. It's called Shelley. I can't remember.
Oh, the lottery where like they pick one person every year to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, that lottery. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, more than once, actually. So hopefully it won't happen again. I've been canceled by the left and attempted to cancel by the right. Here I am stuck in the middle with you now.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm going to wrap up the recording, Jack, so we can chat off camera. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Benjamin. Thanks for having me on.